Good morning students, welcome back to the class. Today we are going to discuss regarding the different structures of an operating system. So we are having different structures of an operating system. Majorly they are monolithic structure, layered structure, microkernel structure, client server structure, virtual machine structure, and the last one is exokernel structure. So these are the different structures we are going to have in the operating system, and it is one of the very important question. If they have asked you regarding the structure of an operating system, you have to explain all the six structures you are going to have. If they have asked you in a short answer what are the different structure of an operating system, like you have to explain a simple structure as well as the layered structure. Simple structure we call it as a monolithic structure also. So why we are going to have these different structures? So the structure of an operating system depends mainly on different components that are interconnected, how the components have been interconnected, and how the functionality has been changing from one structure to another structure, what are the drawbacks we are having in particular structure, and how we have overcome those drawbacks in our another structure. Everything we will be going to see in the structure of an operating system. So here there are majorly six structures, and the first structure is monolithic structure. This monolithic structure we call it as a simple structure also. Why? Because like you will be going to have the application, user programs, and the hardware, the simple structure. So where here the entire operating system is in the working in kernel space only. Like as we all know, we have the user space as well as the kernel space, is it not so? So we are going to have a user space as well as a kernel space. So when it comes to this monolithic structure, so this is the user space, and this one we are having the kernel space. When we are talking regarding this monolithic structure, everything we are going to do in the kernel space only, but not in the user space. So this we also call it as a simple structure also. Kernel space is nothing but like operating system. One part we are going to have a kernel. What is the importance of kernel? In the sense, kernel is the one which is going to look after all the hardware activities of the system, that we call it as a kernel. So when it comes to this monolithic structure, the monolithic structure will be working in the kernel space only. So that is the monolithic structure. So the increase in the size of the kernel as well as the operating system. Why? Because everything we have to do in the kernel, so that we need to have much of the kernel space, and as well as we will be going to have the operating system to be in a 64-bit or more version bit we'll be going to in need of. So that is the monolithic structure. Here comes the monolithic structure. We are going to have the main function, operating system services, and the utility functions. Like in the simpler way we call it as the user programs, like operating system, as well as the last one is the hardware devices. So in a monolithic structure, like a single structure and single way they'll be going to follow from starting to the ending. Like if they want to process, in the sense each and everything has to cross from 1 2 3 stages. Must and should they have to start from the beginning, that is the main function, and they have to end in the utility function only. There is no possibility of coming from OS services, and there is a no possibility of skipping the main function, or there is a no possibility of skipping the utility function. So if anything wants to do in the monolithic structure, in the sense they have to come from the starting, application program, operating system, and the hardware devices. Like they has to use all the three. But what is the drawback you will be going to have find in this? First we'll be going to know regarding the advantages of monolithic kernel. Why? Because the execution, the major part is the execution is very fast when it comes to the monolithic structure. And the services, that is memory management, as we have all seen, the functions or the services provided by the operating system are process management, memory management, file management, scheduling. All these are the services that are going to be provided by the operating system. All these services are is going to be very much fast. Why? Because they are all implemented under the same space. The thing is they are implemented in same space, that is the kernel space. So we need not go for the user space, or we need not shift to the kernel. Why? Because each and everything we have dumped in the kernel space, so the execution is going to be very much faster. Some programs are, if the some programs are there in user and some programs are there in kernel, means we have to shift from user mode to the kernel mode, which is going to take much amount of time. But in the monolithic structure, mono means, as the name itself indicates, a single. In a single space we are dumping all the things. As we are having all the data at a glance, the execution is very much faster in this monolithic structure. A process runs completely in a single address space. That is the major advantage of monolithic structure. But it is going to have drawbacks too. So what are the drawbacks of this monolithic structure is, suppose if any service fails in the monolithic structure, it is going to fail the entire system. Why? Because each and everything we are dumping in a single space. If something has crashed in that space, the entire program or the entire thing what we have dumped over is going to be crashed. So that is the major drawback what we have faced in the monolithic structure. And to add any new services, the entire system need to be modified by the user. So that is one of the major important drawback of the monolithic structure. But the main advantage is monolithic, as the name itself indicates. Mono means single. In single space we are dumping all the programs. That which space we are making use of? We are making use of the kernel space. So whatever the thing we are going to do, we are going to dump in that kernel space. So everything is there in the kernel space, the execution is going to be faster. And that is the major advantage. And the major drawback is all are dumping in a single space. If anything crashed, means the entire system is going to be crashed. That is the major drawback. And the second one is, if you want to update any new thing, the whole system has to be changed. So that is the another drawback what we have faced in this monolithic kernel. And the second one is the layered structure. So what the drawback we have find over there, as everything we are dumping in a single space, that is the single address space, kernel space. If anything crashes occurs, the whole thing or the entire thing is going to be crashed. So in order to overcome that drawback, what we have gone for is, we have gone for the layered structure. So here we are not dumping all the things on a particular or a single address space. We have created different modules for different things. So here we are having 6 tasks to be done. Suppose user programs, IO buffer, process management, memory management, scheduling, and hardware related. So all these things are split into different layers. So here comes the diagram. As you have seen in the diagram, here the hardware layer falls in the first layer, and in the second layer CPU scheduling, and in the third layer memory management, fourth is the process management layer, fifth one is the IO buffer, and sixth one is the user programs. Here we are not dumping all the things on a kernel space. Here we are dumping different things onto the different layers. Suppose if I want to do any sort of process related things, I'll be directly going to the fourth layer. Why? Because fourth layer is majorly concerned with the process management. If I want to go related with some memory things, I'll be going for the third layer. Why? Because layer 3 is whole and sole responsible for the memory management. If I want to do any hardware related items, then I'll be going for the first layer. So instead of going from the starting to the ending in a straight way, here wherever I have to go, which part I have to use, which module I can access, I can go with that particular module instead of accessing all the modules. Here you can find the advantage over here itself. Suppose if anything crashes in layer 3, only that layer 3 will be spoiled. Remaining all the 5 layers are in safe state. If anything happens in the layer 1, only that layer 1 will get crashed. Remaining all the 5 layers will be safe. If any 2 layers have been crashed, remaining all the 4 layers are in a safe situation. That is the major advantage we have found in the layered structure. But we don't find that in the monolithic structure. Even though the execution becomes very fast in monolithic structure, but crashing is the biggest hectic we faced in the monolithic structure. So in order to overcome that drawback, what we have done is we have gone for the layered operating system. Layering means we have divided into different modules, and each task we have kept in a single module. Fine. So this is how layering occurs. So this finds the very advantage. User programs, in the sense, this is the highest layer. The details regarding the user programs and applications that run in operating system, such as word processing, games, browsers, etc., all comes under the user programs. So all these things will be going to done in the user layer only. Second one is the IO buffer. It is one of the important concept, important thing in the computer systems. Why? Because input output systems plays a vital role. They provide the user with the great means of interacting with the system. Because of the input systems like your mouse, keyboard, we are going to interact with the systems. With the use of output printer and scanner, we are going to take the information from the system. So this layer handles the buffers for the IO devices and make use of working correctly. So this is the input output layer. And next the one is the process management. As we all know, process management is one of the functionality of an operating system. Managing of process is known as a process management. So this layer is responsible for the managing of processes. That is, which process has to be assigned to the CPU, which process has to be assigned next second to the CPU. If process 1 has been assigned to the CPU, how much time it is going to be there in that, how much time it has to execute in that CPU. If process 2 is there, how much time we have to give in order to execute in the CPU. That process management things, all the things we'll be going to do in the process management. When it comes to the memory management, managing the memory, we call it as a memory management. Like as we all know, we are having two different memories, main memory and the secondary memory. Majorly we are also having cache memory, associative memory, all the memories we are having, but we are majorly concerned with the main memory and the secondary memory. Each and every task that is going to be executed must loaded onto the main memory, but we know main memory space is very small. We can't accommodate all the instructions onto the main memory. So which instructions are to be loaded onto the memory, which instructions are deleted from the main memory, so that we can give space for the new process. So all these things will be going to comes under the memory management. This is one of the layer. And next one is CPU scheduling. CPU scheduling is this layer going to deal with the scheduling of processes for the CPU. Like as we all know, many number of processes will be there for the time of CPU, but only one process will be allocated to the CPU. Fine. When the processor should enter onto the system, when the processor should leave the CPU, which process has to be allocated to the CPU again, how much time we are giving for the process to be there with the CPU, all these things will be going to see in the CPU scheduling. And finally the last one is the hardware. This is the very important one, which is going to interact with all peripherals with the system, that is mouse, printer, keyboard, scanner, etc. All the hardware parts are going to be interact with the system. So this hardware layer is the lowest layer in the operating system. This is how we have been overcome the drawbacks what we have faced in the monolithic system. So this is the layers. Like as we are having 6 layers, each layer is responsible for doing a particular task. If we want to do any particular task, we can directly go to that particular layer, do the task and coming back. So if anything crashes, only particular layer will be crashed, but not the whole system. So that is the advantage of you having the layered structure. Next comes the microkernel structure. Microkernel structure, as the kernel is the most important or core part of an operating system, which is going to manage all the hardware systems or the hardware system resources. Like this kernel acts as a bridge between the user and the computer hardware, as we all know. So microkernel structure, in the sense, in the kernel we are giving some space to the microkernel. As you have seen in this diagram, kernel we are having. In this kernel only we'll be going to have the microkernel, which is going to contact directly with the hardware parts. So what are the benefits we are having in this microkernel is, like microkernel are modular and are having different modules can be reloaded, uploaded, modified, changed, etc. So as the modules means, modules is always a plus point. So if anything needs to be done, we can do with that particular module only instead of going to any other different modules. These microkernels are very secure and safe. Only those components are those components which we want to execute, that component we have to execute. We shouldn't touch the other components. So microkernel contain few system crashes as compared to the monolithic systems. Why? Because monolithic means as everything dumped at a single place, obviously we used to have many of the crashes. So this is the microkernel structure. So what is the disadvantage of microkernel? In the sense, these are very expensive compared to normal monolithic systems. So switching from one mode to another mode needs some sort of procedures, which is going to be very much a bit difficult to switch from the user mode to kernel mode, or from the kernel mode to user mode. That switching of process is going to be a bit difficult in this microkernel, and the performance of the microkernel can be in different and may lead to some problems. So the performance is going to be reduced because of that context switching from one state to user mode to kernel mode to user mode, and changing of mode bit. All these things need a bit understanding. So this is the drawback of this microkernel system. And next one is the client server structure. The best example of client server structure is the internet what we are going to use, and we are the clients, and the server we are going to have. The mediator is the internet, which is going to connect between you people and the server. So this is the client server structure. So in this client server structure, so when the client sends a request for the data to the server through the internet, the server accepts that required process and delivers the packets. So this request has been back to the client, and clients do not share any of their resources. Example of client server model is, the best example is the email. So what do you mean by a client? Client means a person or an organization who are using a particular services, we call it as a clients. What do you mean by a server? It means a person that serves something, we call it as a server. So when it comes to the client server architecture, so here we are going to have the client system, and here we are going to have the server system. So how the client is going to be contact to the server? By making use of internet. This is the best example of client and service systems. Many clients will be there. These clients sends their request. These clients sends their request to the server through the internet, and server in turn returns the things to the client. So this is the client server operation. Fine. So the client means, as I have said, it means a person or an organization, like which are going to request a particular operation or a particular service. I need that service. Through which medium they are going to send? Through internet they will be going to send to the server. What do you mean by a server? Server is the one which is going to provide services to a particular client. Whatever the service I have requested, that server is going to provide that services to me. That is known as a client server system. So this is the best example of a client server system. There are many number of clients, and these clients request services through internet to the server, and the server is one which is going to provide the responses to the services what we have required. So that is the client server model. So the best example, the best advantage is it is a centralized system. Why? Because we are not distributing the data among all. We are keeping all the data onto the server, and from the server we are getting the services. So when it comes to the cost, it is going to be very less. By maintaining one server, the cost is less. Maintaining of one server, the maintenance is also going to be less. The capacity of client and server can be changed separately. So these are the advantages we are having in a client. If we are having anything, we will be going to have a pros and cons too. So what are the drawbacks you will be going to find in this client server model is, when we are transferring the data from server to the client, in the transferring, in that medium of transfer, changing of packets can be possible, changing of data can be possible. So clients are prone to virus, so that is the major advantage. And data packets may be changed during the transmission, like phishing on or capturing logging credentials is also possible when we are going to have the client server architecture. So there is not much security provided for our credentials first. So when we are going to pass the information from client to the server through internet, and the server is going to send back the data to the client by making use of a medium, that in that medium there is a lots and lots of chances of losing our credentials, like hacking of our credentials. Phishing is going to be possible. So, and clients are very much prone to viruses. These are the different drawbacks you will be going to find in the client server architecture. And next one is the virtual machines. What do you mean by a virtual means it's an illusion, like we are going to have the virtual memory, the memory which we are thinking that we are having a large amount of memory by our side, but actually it doesn't. Like we are, by making use of some services, we are creating an illusion that we are having a large memory. Here comes the virtual machine structure. So virtual machine structures, like it is going to abstract the hardware of a personal computer, such as CPUs, memory, hard disk, printers, plotters, and everything into different execution environments. Fine. When it comes to the virtual machine, like we'll be going to have a feel that each execution environment is handled for a single person. But actually it is not like that. Only one thing, one system will be there, and that is going to provide services for all. But what we feel is, I'm having a particular server and you are having one other server. That server is going to provide responses to you, but it is not the case. It's an feeling that we are having a single system, a single service, face to face dealing, but it is not the thing. We are creating an illusion that virtually they are going to have many of the systems. And if we run different processes on an operating system, it creates an illusion that each process is running on a different processor, having its own virtual memory, but it doesn't happen. We'll be going to have a single memory, and that memory is going to be shared by all. But when it comes to the virtual machines, virtual memory, we will creating a feel that they are having different processors with the different memories, and each processor is having one memory, but it is not that thing. Only one memory will be there, and we are creating an illusion that each process is having only one memory. So this is the virtual machines. So the advantages is, each virtual machine is completely isolated from all other virtual machines. So that is the biggest advantage we find over here. Like virtual machines is going to have a separate instruction structure and different architecture for real computers, and it is going to have the maintenance is very easy, and the convenient is very easy. Recovering of data is very much easy in the virtual machines. What is the major drawback you will be going to find in the virtual machines is, these virtual machines can affect by other running virtual machines. So that is the drawback you will be going to find in the virtual machines. Virtual machines are not as effective as a real one. These virtual, in the sense we are creating an illusion, that's it. So these, as illusion doesn't work properly, these virtual machines are also having some troublesome when we are going to do in this virtual machine environment. And the next one is exokernel. This exokernel it is one of the architecture of an operating system. This exokernel moves all the hardware abstractions into an untrusted libraries known as library operating systems. Why? Because exokernels are something like that, in which we are going to have the task to be executed with the proper guidance and with proper idea. The main task or main goal is to ensure that there is no forced abstraction. So that is the main goal in which we can provide in exokernel. But what is the disadvantage is this exokernel is not much used, and this is not much used by the many systems. So this is the exokernel. Here you can find normal kernel. Beside the normal kernel you can have the exokernel. This exokernel can communicate with the hardware directly instead of uh, instead of going for the libraries, going for the normal kernel and then hardware. This exokernel can handle the programs directly, or can make the programs directly connect to the hardware. This is the main advantage of using the exokernel. So the advantage is user space allocations are allowed to implement their own. Applications can make more efficient and intelligent the use of hardware resources. But the drawback is this technology is not thoroughly researched. So this is the drawback of an exokernel. So this is how we used to have the different structures of an operating system. So basically, if they're going to ask, means like you have to write about the simple structure and the layered structure. Simple structure is nothing but the monolithic structure. When it comes to an essay question, like you have to answer all the 6 different structures with the diagrams along with the advantages and disadvantages. And that's all for today, students. Like, as this operating system structures are very important, go through the videos and get a clarification regarding this structure of an operating structure clearly. Fine. Thank you all, students. Have a nice day.